Good evening. Today has obviously been a very troublesome and trying time for everyone in our region, and especially for our great city. I'll try to give you a summary of what has happened, although information is quite sketchy at this time, and then I will tell you what we are doing as a municipality to help our citizens. Immediately before I came here, I was on the phone with the University of Washington Geophysics Department. They informed me that this morning's earthquake has been upgraded from a 7.2 magnitude to a 7.5. That makes this the largest earthquake in the history of this region in modern times. Now, thankfully, our initial reports indicate that there have been 0 deaths so far. We're keeping our fingers crossed, and hopefully it'll remain at that number. There have been numerous injuries, however. The emergency rooms at Harborview and the rest of the region's hospitals are quite crowded. Hopefully, all those people recover quickly and without any ill effects. Now, structure loss was greatest to the south of the city core, as you might expect. That's an area that was built on fill. The buildings in that area are 75 years old or more typically, and in addition, they were built out of unreinforced masonry. The destruction in that area is fairly widespread, with numerous buildings being collapsed and several other buildings in a state of partial collapse. The newer areas of the city have fared much better. That's indicative of our current building codes and how well they work. Other areas of the city that have not fared real well have been the coastal areas. Many of these are on the bluffs. And if you will recall, 5 or 6 days ago, we had 2 days of heavy rains. We received about 2 inches of rain in those 2 days. That rain has now percolated its way down through the upper soil strata. Those soils are, excuse me, those soils allow the water to go down quite easily, and they have now reached the impermeable layer where that water sits and forms a slip plain. That, combined with a 7.5 magnitude earthquake, has led to numerous landslides. We expect those to number in the hundreds. Now, what are we doing as a city? We have fully implemented all of our emergency procedures. Our emergency phone lines are up and running by trained staff. We are receiving numerous calls from the citizens who are worried about their structures, whether it be business or residential. We field those calls and ask the person that's calling several questions. Based on the response to those questions, we set up a triage system. The triage system gives us a pecking order for which buildings we should inspect first, and the purpose of those inspections is to determine whether or not they're suitable for human occupation. Our inspection teams go out in teams of 2. One of the people in that team is a building inspector who is very knowledgeable about construction techniques. The other person is an engineer who is very knowledgeable about the structural integrity of building. Together they form a very powerful team. They do a very quick run-through of the buildings to determine if they're suitable for human occupation. And at the end of that inspection, they tag every building they go into with a green, a yellow, or a red tag. The definition of what those means is on the handouts that you were given when you came in. Now, I do want to emphasize that these are quick run-throughs that our inspections do. And because of that, it is the building owner's responsibility to make sure that their buildings are safe. They need to call the appropriate professionals, have them come in and do a survey of their buildings if they have any concern at all. It is their responsibility to do this and to do any remedial action that's necessary. That's my statement. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions now that you may have. And Walker from the Skeptical Gazette.
Yes, Tom, or Mr. Mayor. Some certain seismologists from other regions in California have suggested that it's only a matter of time before this region experiences an 8.9 or greater earthquake. And they have suggested that even the upgrades that are protocol for the current day will be insufficient to protect buildings at that scale of magnitude. Is the city looking at strengthening even further the standards, and where would the money come from to do that?
As you probably know, the building codes are revised every 3 years. Every cycle of the code revisions do strengthen that part of the code. It's always a question of balancing cost versus the actual expectation of such an earthquake. Those seem to be coming every 1,000 to 1,400 years, and we're not really close to that time frame since the last one. But we do progressively go towards strengthening our building codes.
Mr. Mayor?
It's in the back.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I liked your summary. Thank you so much for your update. Given the severity of the earthquake, what role is the federal government playing in the cleanup and the assistance for those who are injured?
Since this earthquake just happened this morning, of course I have been in contact with Washington, and they are sending FEMA representatives out here, and the Red Cross will also be setting up a station.
Mr. Mayor?
It's Tony from the BBC.
How will you explain to the rest of the country that we have so many buildings built on fill? And are we continuing to build on fill? I mean, it seems to me that we're very lucky. You say we have no deaths to report in this particular earthquake, but it seems that we're extremely lucky, especially as such a large part of the city is built on fill. I mean, what are we going to do about that now and in the future?
Well, like I said, those buildings are typically at least 75 years old down in that part of the town. Mm-hmm. That was really before the era of building codes, or certainly knowledge about earthquakes. Current building codes take that into account, and they have to build a lot higher standard.
What does that mean, higher standards? I mean, does that mean stronger footings and better engineering? And
yes. The buildings that are built in those areas now will be able to sustain such a magnitude earthquake.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, with all the people flooding into the streets from their damaged homes and apartment complexes in South Seattle, what is the city planning to do for all these displaced people?
Well, first off, we don't have an actual count for that right now, but there will be emergency shelters set up throughout the town in the normal locations. That's all I have time for right now, but I would like to reiterate that we have no deaths. There are numerous injuries. There is significant structural damage throughout the city, and we are manning our phones, and our inspectors are going out to inspect buildings. So thank you very much.